the last several days, as COVID cases continue to surge across the country, the fears, anxieties and questions of our viewers, of our citizens are increasing by the day. Which is why we are bringing to you once again a doctor's roundtable to answer all your queries on COVID 2.0 or the second wave of COVID-19 across the country. And to take all your queries, I'm joined by a special panel. Dr. Hemant Thakkar, one of Mumbai's leading consultant physicians across several hospitals, is joining us. I'm joined by Dr. Rama Narasimhan. She is Senior Consultant Internal Medicine at Apollo Hospital in Chennai. And I'm also joined by Dr. Harsh Mahajan, the founder and Chief Radiologist at Mahajan Imaging in the National Capital. We also hope to be joined by Dr. Vivek Nangia, the Principal Director and Head Pulmonology at Max Healthcare. Thank you all very much for joining us on this very special Doctors Roundtable. Let's get started with all the questions, doctors, that are coming in. The first question, and maybe Dr. Thakkar, you can take this. Are there any new symptoms for COVID 2.0? For the second wave, are there any new symptoms that one should be watching out for?
Well, you know, this time COVID 2.0 is a little suspiciously slow and it creeps into the system. The patient has very mild symptoms for the first 3-4 days. And it is on the 7th, 8th, you know, it's 2 days later than the previous COVID. We're seeing as late as 8th, 9th day when the fever just does not break. There is a lull in the fever for a little while, but the fever just doesn't break. And then when you investigate the patient, you realize that the CT scan is bad and you need to give the patient steroids, and that's when the patient needs urgent help. So we are getting later presentation of serious symptoms, giving the patient a false sense of security. Oh, it's a week and I have no problems. It's mild COVID.
Okay, so you're saying this time the symptoms are coming in possibly after a week, and that's something to watch out for. Linked to that, and Dr. Mahajan, you could pick this up because I know that your center is doing lots of testing. If I have COVID symptoms, but the test is negative, what should I do, doctor? Dr. Mahajan, what should I do if I have COVID symptoms, but the test is negative?
This is happening, Rajdeep. It happened in the first wave. It's happening equally frequently now. And the most important thing, if you have COVID symptoms, and even if you have a negative RT-PCR report, is to isolate yourself. Because we've seen that the first report may come negative, and if you do it again after 2 days or 3 days, it may come positive. The other way that you can actually try to diagnose in the right clinical setting and in this presence of a pandemic, especially if the condition of the patient is not very good, is actually you may be able to do an early CT scan. And on the CT scan, you see typical lesions of COVID. And based on that, you can start the treatment for COVID, and you will find 2-3 days down the line the test coming positive.
So linked to that, may I ask this, doctor, should we be looking therefore at the CT value in an RT-PCR result? What does that indicate? Is that what I should be looking at?
See, Rajdeep, the CT value and the CT scan are two different things. CT value on the RT-PCR report is a rough approximation of really the viral load. Of course, it can be dependent also on how the sample is taken, but that does give you an approximate idea of viral load. And when it is 20 and below, you tend to find that the disease is more serious. Above 20, it is less, and it is said that above 24 to 35, we go up to 35 actually, it would be much milder. And there are some papers which suggest that above 24, it may not even infect others. But the ICMR has given a clear guideline that since the CT value may vary from kit to kit, may vary on the way the test has been done. We should not say that above 24 you can go out. We should still be careful. So in India, we take a CT value above 35 as a negative test and below 35 as a positive test, lower the CT value, and this really stands for cycle threshold. Lower the CT value, higher the viral load, higher the chance of getting a serious disease, and higher the CT value, lesser the chance. The CT scan, of course, is a imaging test, as you know, and is different from the CT value.
Can I make a correction here, Rashi?
Can I just to get this clear on testing, you want to add a point, Dr. Thakkar?
Yes. So I want to add one point very clearly, that in Mumbai, where we are seeing this variant, you know, the variant can also miss the RT-PCR antigenic testing for the simple reason, which is why you have to do the test again. There is an escape by the virus on the standard RT-PCR routine testing, which is why do not rely on the RT-PCR alone once. And do not do the RT-PCR too early. Do it on the third day or the second day night. Otherwise, you will get a false positive and a false negative and a false sense of security. Having said that, the cyclic threshold, which my colleague correctly said, lower the cyclic threshold indicates that you have a higher viral load. And a higher viral load means you have a greater chance of transmissibility. But this time we are seeing that patients with 12 and 13 are doing well. So don't get chicken-hearted and small-hearted and crestfallen just because your CT value cyclic threshold is 12 or 13. It just indicates that you have a high viral load. It doesn't mean that you're going to have a very severe disease. We are seeing people with 12 and 13 doing very well, and we are seeing with people with 23, 24 getting into hospital for oxygen. So please do not let the CT value of the RT-PCR fool you.
Right. So let me get this very clear, and maybe Dr. Mahajan, you want to give us a conclusive statement on this. If I do an RT-PCR test and it turns out negative, doctor, but I have COVID symptoms or I feel a sense of fever, listlessness, should I do a second test? And why are so many initial RT-PCR tests unable to pick up the infection?
Let me address that issue, Rajdeep. See, the incubation period of this virus is quite wide. It can vary from 2 to 14 days with an average of about 5 days. So like Dr. Thakkar has very rightly said, if we do a test very early, then you may get it negative. However, generally people who have symptoms would tend to have a positive RT-PCR test. But here again, the RT-PCR by itself has a 30% false negative rate. And that is dependent on several factors. I would not like to go into those. And hence, that is the reason we say that if in case the clinical symptoms are of COVID, you have a negative RT-PCR test, isolate yourself, don't think you don't have COVID, and repeat it again after 3 days. Maybe the disease and the viral load has increased over these 3 days and you will come out positive. A CT scan, on the other hand, would need to be done in those cases, even with a negative RT-PCR, where there is low oxygen level, there are severe symptoms, and you just can't wait for those 3 days. That is where the CT scan is helpful. Also, may I add that the so-called escape mechanism is actually talked about in terms of vaccine, but this missing of the cases and then picking up later on the same RT-PCR is probably because of viral load and not because RT-PCR has missed it, because it is the same test which picks up the positive, and this positive is sent to CSIR for whole genome sequencing, where you find the mutations. So it is the first step is the RT-PCR, which when positive, the sample is sent, and as we know, about 5% of positive samples should be tested. So let us not think that RT-PCR has suddenly gone bad, or that the mutations are not being picked, the positive RT-PCR tests and samples are what are being sent for whole genome sequencing, where we are picking up the mutations.
Right. Okay, I think we've got a sense of that. So even if my first test turns out to be negative, if I have COVID symptoms after 2 to 3 days, I must necessarily do the second test, and in some cases the doctors will advise a check on my CT value, and they will advise me to go through a CT X-ray test. That's part of the system, particularly when the initial RT-PCR has turned negative. Let's turn to the other big question, and Dr. Narasimhan, as an internal medicine specialist, why don't you take this, and maybe Dr. Thakkar, then you can also come in. Is remdesivir of any use in preventing deaths? Every day, ma'am, I'm getting people showing me prescriptions from doctors saying take remdesivir. When should remdesivir be taken, and is it of any use in preventing deaths? Respond, Dr. Narasimhan.
I think it's a very relevant and a very hot topic of debate as well. We do use remdesivir, but we have very clear guidelines as to when to use them. First of all, only in the inpatient setting, which means that the patient should be somebody who warrants an admission into a hospital, which means that they have symptoms, they have low oxygen. The timing and the use of remdesivir is specific to those patients who are sick. So the theory is that when the CT ratio is up, and before the cytokine storm sets in, which is where the body's response to the virus kicks in, and it causes a whole lot of inflammation, by which we see the symptoms of the disease itself. You want to use the drug at the right time for those kind of patients. It is not meant for patients with very mild disease, for patients who can be managed at home, which means their oxygen saturation levels are fine, or on the CAT scan, you do not see severe disease. And so it is an antiviral medication. It should be used for patients who are necessarily sick enough to require oxygen, who are very unwell, and who are in a hospital. We need to dose it at the right time. We need to use the appropriate dose, and it's a short therapy course, and we use it only for 5 days. Very rarely we extend it on to 10 days.
Okay, let me get in Dr. Thakkar. Dr. Thakkar, remdesivir, more and more doctors seem to be sort of giving it as part of the prescription. Should it only be used in extreme cases?
So I tend to agree with my colleague. I tend to agree with my colleague that if remdesivir, because it is used by all and sundry, this is why it is in apparent shortage. I think remdesivir should be only used in patients who have significant CT scan involvement, who have significant clinical involvement, in that they have unrelenting fever, their oxygenation is dropping, and they need to be hospitalized. Your question, which remains unanswered, is does it prevent death? Till date, in this pandemic, the only antiviral which has seemed to shorten the entire course of the stay in hospital, or which has seemed to shorten the severity of this disease, is remdesivir. So obviously, indirectly, remdesivir could be said is life-saving. We usually give remdesivir on the 5th or the 6th day when the patient comes into hospital, because otherwise he is still at home. Of course, we would give it early if the patient comes with a fulminant COVID. But I agree, do not use remdesivir for all and sundry. It is for those 15% or those 10% of patients who really need it.
Let me come to you, Dr. Nangia, because I know you're handling a lot of hospital patients at the moment, a lot of them with pulmonary problems as a result of COVID. The big question, Dr. Nangia, at what point should a patient seek hospitalization? Number of viewers are asking this. When do I move in from home quarantine to hospitalization? Is there a particular stage, Dr. Nangia, which you would recommend?
Thank you, Rajdeep, for asking me a very valid question. Actually, people are panicking a lot these days, and even on day one, they want to come and get themselves hospitalized. In fact, we are inundated with calls saying that, doc, I have underlying cardiac disease, underlying diabetes, advanced other problems. So we would like to get hospitalized, or we would like to get our parents hospitalized immediately. But I don't think it really serves any purpose. There is clear-cut guidelines which have been issued by the government which say that hospitalization should only occur if the oxygen levels have started to drop below 94% or 92% in the elders. There's absolutely no point in coming to the hospital earlier than that. And this usually happens in the second phase of the disease and not the first phase. First phase is usually a mild disease where people only have cough, cold, fever, low grade, some kinds of body aches, loose motions, loss of smell, loss of taste. It's only the second phase of the disease, which usually earlier it used to start after the 7th or the 8th day. Now it started to start after the 5th day, when the pneumonia starts to set in into the lungs, oxygen starts to drop, patients start to feel breathless. That is the only time when you should come and get hospitalized, or later on if the fever is unrelenting and not settling down. Those are the only situations where you should get hospitalized, or if somebody is vomiting or some other, because of which you need IV medication, not otherwise.
Very, very clear. Right. Linked to that, Dr. Nangia, what can a person who needs oxygen do at home? My oxygen is falling, I'm at home, quarantine. Is there something I can do immediately at that moment?
Right. So immediately at that moment, probably only oxygen supplementation can help. A high dose of steroids can help. But what is important is that if the oxygen starts to drop, then you should not stay at home. There's a very clear message that I would want to give, that if once the oxygen levels start dropping, then you need to be in the hospital, because we have to give the patient the IV medication in terms of remdesivir, as Dr. Dhakkar just explained, along with steroids. Steroids may be higher dosages. Then there are other medicines like tocilizumab that one might want to use in that clinical situation, of course, depending on patient to patient. But yes, once the oxygen levels drop, then there's no reason to stay at home saying that, okay, I've applied oxygen and I'm tiding over the phase, unless, of course, there's a major crisis, if the beds are not available or some other reason why you don't want to shift to the hospital. But otherwise, the oxygen dropping should be the first indication that you need to be in the hospital immediately.
I think I would also like to add.
Let me come to a very important question, Doctor. Yeah, please go ahead, Dr. Narasimhan. Please go ahead.
I think I would agree completely with Dr. Nangia. In terms of the value of the CAT scan or the CT scan, I think what it's also shown us is sometimes people tend to not drop their oxygen but have gotten a CT scan and the severity of illness is pretty high. And for a seemingly lull sort of a period, they're somewhat asymptomatic or hold on to their oxygen. But that should be something to alert the physician that this is somebody who could potentially go badly. And if they have multiple comorbidities like other illnesses, age, etc., we might have a lower threshold to admit them. I think those would be the softer criteria to bring the patient in a little sooner. And of course, if they develop a blood clot going into the lung or something that sets them up for it, again, we might want to bring them in. So definitely I agree with Dr. Nangia that the oxygen is like the golden thumb rule, wherein we watch that like a hawk and have them check their pulse ox and have a cut point below which we don't want them at home. But perhaps we might also sort of ferret out some more risk or a tendency to get worse by looking at the CT the severity of the illness on the CAT scan radiologically, and maybe bring them in just for an observation. That's also something we tend to do, provided there are beds available.
Just to understand and settle this, Dr. Mahajan, why do doctors order an X-ray CT when the RT-PCR is negative? People want to know, why do you order that and what do I look out for when I do it?
See, Rajdeep, this is in that specific situation where the clinical signs and symptoms are of COVID, and the treating clinician knows that this is COVID, but the RT-PCR report is coming negative. That's where at times, and especially there may be times when even the second RT-PCR may come negative. It happened in the first wave, it's happening even now. That is when one decides that let's do a CT scan. Number one, seeing the typical location of the lesions, we can be reasonably certain that we are dealing with COVID-19. Number two, we can also know the extent of the lesions, as the good doctor said just now. And based on that, even with a negative RT-PCR report, one can into hospital in a suspect COVID area, the government regulations are that in the COVID ward, you will only get someone who is COVID RT-PCR positive, but you can bring the patient into the suspect area, and all kind of this treatment can be instituted, so that it doesn't happen that he goes down very rapidly at home and then time is lost and you may lose the patient.
Right.
So that is the real reason for getting the CT done. But here I would caution that CT should not be overused. What we are seeing, the day the RT-PCR report says positive, I start getting calls, doc, we need a CT scan. No, you do not need a CT scan. There are specific indications for it, and the major amongst them is when the oxygen saturation levels fall below 94. Of course, other things are to be taken in the clinical context.
Very
So this is what we have been
very valuable information there from you, Doctor. Dr. Thakkar, why don't you take... Right. Dr. Thakkar, just linked to that is a big question that's being asked everywhere. Why are people getting infected even after taking 2 vaccine doses? Number of people believe that once they've taken the second vaccine dose, all is well. Why are people getting infected even after getting 2 vaccine doses, Dr. Thakkar?
So I can tell you very confidently about Mumbai. I'm sure the same will hold true elsewhere. I had 2 doctor colleagues who got inoculated with me in January and then in late February. I have my medical assistants who were also inoculated, and they all got the virus, and they had a little cough and cold, and they tested positive. Now, this is probably because of the mutant, which produced a respiratory-like illness. But none of them needed heavy medication, definitely no hospitalization. Now, this is as far as the medical community is concerned. There are lots of people who took inoculation and still got it. Maybe it's for 2-3 reasons also. One is people let their guard down. The vaccine is not 100% insurance. The mask is more secure as compared to anything else to prevent a re-entry. And 3 is people felt that they could meet everybody, mingle with everybody, so we lost our social discipline. And all this, the virus watched carefully. In January and February, the virus planned and plotted and mutated. And in Mumbai, we have a double mutant variant, which does escape even the antibodies, immune escape, and comes and attacks the respiratory system. So if you ask me the next question, then what's the use of immunization? The use of immunization is that if you do get COVID again, it will be milder, and you certainly will need hospitalization. And we have a data study that anybody who has been reinfected with COVID has not died of that COVID. So that's a great sense of security for the whole country to go ahead and get themselves vaccinated in turn.
That's a question also that in a way is linked to the next question that I want to take to you, Dr. Nangia. People who have had COVID earlier and getting infected, would you say that they are much safer? Do they generally have mild symptoms? Do they have less to worry? I've had COVID and I get it again after 6 months. Should I be worried or with the infection, or do you believe I am in a safer place, Dr. Nangia?
So basically there are 2 or 3 kind of situations here. One situation is that you've had COVID and within 3 months you've again had fever and you get yourself tested, it's COVID positive. But that doesn't mean that it's a fresh infection. It could just be a lingering infection where the virus has not gone away from your body, and the inflammatory cascade is still on. So this is what is called long COVID, and this kind of patient we've seen quite a bit. As far as reinfection is concerned, reinfection is usually with another strain of the virus, a mutant strain. So far, I think 4 or 5 such cases have been reported from our country, and about 28 or 30 cases have been reported by WHO from across the globe. Most of these patients had a more severe illness when they were reinfected by a mutant strain as compared to the previous illness when they had. They had to be hospitalized. They required the stronger medication like remdesivir and all. And the outcome, and the illness was also prolonged. So people who have COVID should not get that false sense of security that they've had it once and they won't develop it again. They should always worry that if the second time COVID was to happen, it could be worse than before because the immune system is primed. It may just overreact to the virus. And especially if it is a mutant strain, then the chances are that it may just land up into greater complications than earlier.
And I'd also like to add, Mr. Sardesai, like
can I
Dr. Nangia
then look at
can I
yes, please go ahead.
Something? Like Dr. Nangia said, the shedders, the virus in the body can be shed for a lot longer. It can go on up. You can continue to shed the virus for 3 months, by which time you're well on the way to recovery and you're fine. So you might continue to test COVID RT-PCR positive for a while longer, even after you've recovered, which always should be sort of in the back of the mind of any doctor taking care of them for a second fever, because it might not be COVID. It can be an entirely different illness, which also we need to sort of, look for, which we are seeing. And I'm sure all my colleagues would also agree. We are seeing malaria, we are seeing enteric fever, typhoid. So not every fever necessarily, obviously in a pandemic, that's the most common cause fever. But we must also keep in mind to look for other reasons as well. And not just blame every fever, which is especially now who've had it, blame it only on the COVID.
Okay, let's take more questions which are coming in, particularly for our physicians. Dr. Thakkar, is this wave seeing entire families getting infected? I know in Mumbai, in high-rise buildings, families are getting infected. Why is that happening? And B, what should families do in such a situation? Should they all then live in different rooms in the house, each one isolating from the other?
So definitely not families, but floors are getting involved. That's because of this greater transmissibility that we are seeing in this virus. Now, if all of them are positive, remember, if you have one monkey in the house, you cage the monkey. But if there are all monkeys in the house, they can all live together happily ever after. But that doesn't mean they step out of the house. That doesn't mean they call people in and out to deliver things. So you have to barricade them at their entrance. And they have to follow all the precautions of home treatment and follow the parameters to the T. So if one of them deteriorates, they can get hospitalized. The next question is, if one is more sick and the others are less sick, will that more sick man pass on some more illness to the others? No. So they can all live together. There's no issue.
Okay. Linked to that again, doctor, are children and younger people getting infected more this time? And is the treatment, Dr. Thakkar, for children and younger people different to that for those over the age of 45?
So I will de-link your question. Children under the age of 12 to 14 who are found to be infected, I've checked with my pediatric colleagues also. They have infection, but they needed only symptomatic treatment. They did not need specific antivirals till date. Kids or youngsters over the age of 18 or 21, they can get severely infected and they do need treatment. It could also mean that they may need hospitalization. And we are seeing the 25 to 45 bracket being severely involved in Mumbai. They do need steroids. They don't need hospitalization, but they do need steroids because their lungs are more affected. One last thing here when we discussed about CT. As I think one of my colleagues correctly said, just because you have a RT-PCR positive today, you don't do your CT tomorrow. If you want to do a CT, which if it is indicated, do it on the 6th or 7th day. Because people come to us with RT-PCR report, next day there is a CT report, and the CT report says 1 on 25, and he says, I am out of it. That CT migrates and progresses to 8 on 25 on the 7th day. I think Dr. Mahajan correctly said this. So this is one more warning to the people watching your show.
Right. Just to get this clarified, doctor, because someone is wanting a clarification. If multiple members in a house are sick, can they help each other? I think you said they can. But can they drop masks or do they isolate in separate rooms? Are we very clear? Can they therefore must they necessarily live in separate rooms?
No. What are they masking? If people who are normal don't wear masks at home, as I am not wearing in my house, is because everybody is negative. So by that corollary, if everybody is positive, the virus is the same. So there's no need to wear a mask amongst people. Even my patients who are admitted and sharing a room, the two of them don't wear a mask because they have the same virus. So that's not required.
Okay, so, okay. The big question, and maybe Dr. Nangia, you and Dr. Narasimhan could take this, because what should asymptomatic patients do? Dr. Nangia, you are getting a lot of patients who are hospitalized with symptoms, particularly lung and oxygen deficiencies. But if I'm asymptomatic, what do I do at home? Dr. Nangia, what's your advice?
So again, there would be two categories of patients here. One is asymptomatic and the other is mildly symptomatic. Asymptomatic patient should be isolated at home for the next 15 to 17 days, should not move out. Why I'm emphasizing here is that people invariably think that they are asymptomatic, so they would not be spreading the disease. Let me correct them here that the spread of the disease starts 2 days prior to the onset of symptoms. So even if somebody was to get symptomatic, he or she would be spreading the disease even before the symptoms were to develop. Similarly, an asymptomatic carrier stage is the stage where the transmission is the maximum, because the person himself does not know whether he's actually carrying the infection or not. So if somebody has been incidentally detected to be positive, he should actually be isolated and not be allowed to move out of the house, which doesn't usually happen, because we see that very often in the hospitals, that we have patients admitted with COVID positive and their attendants are also COVID positive. They know it very well, but they usually hide it from us and they keep roaming around the entire hospital because they are mildly symptomatic or asymptomatic. So asymptomatic patients should be isolated. Mildly symptomatic patients should be given treatment according to their symptoms. If they have cough, cold, then they have to be treated symptomatically. There's an antiviral also that is available, which one could consider giving in certain special situations, but not to all and sundry here. So those are the two situations that you may encounter.
Okay.
Okay,
I just, Dr. Narasimhan, Sunil Batra is asking Dr. Narasimhan, because we spoke about remdesivir, linked to that, he's asking, can one take dexamethasone tablets in home quarantine? At what stage should one start this? So, a lot of people are apparently also taking dexamethasone. Should they be taking it in home quarantine, and at what stage?
Quite frankly, we hardly ever prescribe this in outpatient setting, except in long COVID patients who've had severe illness and fibrosis or scarring of the lung. That's the only time that I prescribe an tablet of a steroid for them to go out with and take at home. So my answer is no. I don't really recommend that.
Right.
My colleagues can confer on this. Neither remdesivir nor dexamethasone is a medication to be taken lightly and at home. If they're sick enough to warrant such medication, they should be belonging in a hospital. The purpose of dexamethasone, to clarify to Mr. Batra, is it is an anti-inflammatory medication. It also decreases the immune response of the body, and so the theory is that it's exuberant or a hyperactive immune response that causes a lot of inflammation, and therefore the cascade of events that lead to all the problems that the patient faces. So the dexamethasone subsides that sort of exuberant response. So what we really need is our body, in a mild case, somebody fit enough to stay home. We need the patient to have an appropriate immune response, which is not exuberant. So we do not want to be suppressing it at that stage. So really not.
So I will interject here just for 1 minute.
Okay, we've got lots of questions, doctors, so I'm going to move on very fast in almost 2020 mode. Dr. Thakkar, quick questions to you. When should one wear double mask? What kind of mask should we be using?
Well, if you're going to a center either for vaccination, investigation, hospital, etc., going to a place where you know there are patients who could be sick, please wear an N95 mask. We wear a double mask when we go into hospital to see our patients. Otherwise, you don't need a double mask.
Okay, what are the symptoms for blood clots after vaccination, doctor? Is this have you got any such patients who come to you worried about blood clots after vaccination? Is this exaggerated, this whole controversy over AstraZeneca in the West? Do you believe that this is a concern, Dr. Thakkar?
Not at all. It's not a matter of concern. I have yet to see anybody coming to me with this clotting issue following AstraZeneca's vaccine. So even if Astra has reported it or UK has reported it, it's a minuscule amongst the millions of injections. Who knows whether they would anyway have thrown a clot in spite of the vaccine or because of the vaccine.
Dr. Mahajan, take this for us. What does antibodies count in a blood test indicate? People getting antibodies test done after getting vaccinated. Should I be getting the test done? And what does the test indicate, Dr. Mahajan?
See, the recommendation is that there's no need for a test and that we should go ahead and get the second dose, as has been mandated by different governments across the world. People are getting antibody tests done. They are still not very, let me say, standardized as yet. Different kind of values are being thrown up by different kits. And across the globe, there is no recommendation that after the first dose, you get your antibody checked and then you go for the second dose. What happens if the antibody is high? You will still get the second dose. If it's low, you still have to get the second dose. So there is no need, and I've been repeating this ad nauseum, but people still want to know somehow, but there's no need.
Okay, no need for it. Dr. Nangia, does teleconsultation work? Are you recommending people to maybe if they have any symptoms or if they are worried, do they do it teleconsultation or should they be coming to the hospital to meet their doctors?
So basically at a time of this pandemic, ongoing pandemic, I would suggest that anybody who's running fever, cough, cold, body aches, sore throat, loose motions, loss of smell, loss of taste, should not move out of the house at all. They should totally isolate themselves. This is for their own safety and for the safety of their own dear, loved and dear ones. And also of the community. I think this should be their responsibility towards the community that they're not spreading it to the others. So best is to stay indoors, get themselves tested, contact their doctors or healthcare workers on a teleconsult and take the appropriate guidance from them sitting in the comforts of their own homes rather than moving around to get themselves tested and coming to the hospital to show themselves, to get themselves examined. It really doesn't help.
Okay, I've got just 5 minutes on the show, so I'm going to get in lots of questions as I can. Very quickly, Dr. Narasimhan, a lot of people asking, should we take home remedies, vitamin supplements to build immunity, vitamin C, zinc? Do you recommend that?
Quite honestly, if it's as harmless as a vitamin, go for it. We don't have enough studies to support that they really help. But if they feel like they're doing something that helps them feel better, go for it. But please use a word of caution. Don't do things that you do not know what the source is, and herbs, which we don't know what gets into it. Yeah.
Okay. Dr. Thakkar, Rajni Rao asking, what happens to those who've taken their first shot of Covishield and test positive 28 days later, almost when it is time for a second vaccine? When should they take the second dose? This question of the second dose coming in again and again. In an ideal situation, if I get COVID between the first and second dose, do I further delay my second dose?
We usually say 8 weeks after recovering from your COVID, you can take your next dose. So you need to wait for the 8 weeks to go by before you take your second dose. Question is, why did you develop it? Did you drop your mask? Did you celebrate prematurely? So you're probably paying for that.
Mazhar Moin asked Dr. Thakkar, can steroids be given to all those tested positive above 50 years of age, irrespective of medical history?
Not at all. This is the problem. COVID has taught people a few names and they want to do everything. Yesterday they were hoarding remdesivir. Tomorrow, if I say yes, they will hoard steroids. Steroids are an extremely important piece of medication which has to be given under supervision, as one of my colleagues said. In Bombay, we are using steroids low dose at home also, so that the hospital deluge is prevented. But you cannot use steroids except under medical supervision. Don't do that, please.
Atul Lal asked Dr. Thakkar, is it advisable to mix vaccines? I got Covishield in first dose. Should I take Covaxin in the second?
Well, I'm not advising it, but there are enough trials now that are going on and a few people advising that vector vaccines or attenuated viral vaccines can be mixed. A Covaxin with a Covishield or a Sputnik with something else. Remember, Sputnik itself is 2 doses, but of separate vaccine. The Sputnik dose on day 1 and the Sputnik dose on 21 are different vaccines. They are made by the same thing with the same technology, but their conglomeration of attenuation is different. So you could, if you wanted to, and if your doctor agreed, mix similar vaccines, but you can't mix a Pfizer with a Covishield or a Moderna with a Covaxin, because they are mRNA vaccines. You can't mix those.
Dr. Nangia, this is being asked. Dr. Nangia, a friend of mine is asking, he's got asthma. Should he be extra careful in the next few weeks? Are you recommending, are asthmatics even more prone to this second wave? Any evidence of that, Dr. Nangia?
So all patients who have any existing comorbidity like diabetes, hypertension, bronchial asthma, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, heart disease, lung cancer, cancers, immunosuppressive therapies, heart disease, all of them are equally prone to developing respiratory tract infection, especially COVID, because asthma especially results in a low-grade kind of an inflammation inside the lungs, which therefore should always be kept under control with their regular maintenance therapy. Otherwise, if the asthma is uncontrolled, then they're likely to develop COVID, more likely to develop COVID, and also more likely to develop complications because of COVID. Because there's already an underlying inflammation. On top of that, the virus is provided a kind of a low immune response and can definitely result in more cases and more severe cases.
Very quickly, Dr. Narasimhan, Sunil Kumar Gupta is asking, should NRIs be planning to visit India now? Are you saying, do you believe that travel should be now reduced to the very minimum for the next few weeks? Travel only unless it's absolutely urgent, Dr. Narasimhan?
Mr. Gupta, it's a very debated topic at this point. And I think given the scale at which the infection is progressing and each country seems to be dealing with its own separate strains and with its own set of governmental rules, I can tell you from personal experience, travel right now is extraordinarily difficult, involves a lot of paperwork, a lot of checkpoints. So I would say to make it easy for yourself as well as in a public health domain, it is probably wise to minimize travel except only for absolutely necessary reasons. It just makes life a whole lot simpler and exposes you.
Okay. Dr. Thakkar, another quick question. How long after testing negative can one mix with people? Is there a period you would recommend?
So we usually believe that after a period of 14 days, you get non-infectious. But non-infectious, which means you come out of your quarantine. But we like you to stay at home for another week. Now, there are different guidelines by different agencies. So I would say after 18 days, for sure, you'll have no problem. But we follow the thumb rule. People who are sick and who have been discharged, 14 days at home quarantine, 14 days in your isolation. After that, stay in the house for a week. Then you can go out. But technically, you are non-infectious on the 15th day.
So it's actually about an 18 to 21 day cycle. Linked to that, doctor, while we talk about patients and ask them to quarantine at home, be very careful in lockdown conditions, what about our religious leaders, devotees, and indeed our politicians with their political rallies, Kumbh Mela, Ramzan celebrations? What's your recommendation for them?
Rajdeep, we are at the crest of the second tidal wave. History has shown us that the second wave is always wave which is higher and worse than the first. I would say put health before everything else. Politics, religion, festival, anything, even education has taken a toll. Health is wealth. If you live for another day, you'll be able to enjoy all these things that you are sacrificing now. We are seeing it. We are at the brunt of it. Through this medium, I wish to appeal to all my Indians. Be careful. Stay at home. Be practical. Don't do something stupid. Don't fall prey to Google, to Dr. Google and Mr. WhatsApp. Listen to your doctor. Listen to your government guidelines. Be safe. May will be better for us.
Okay. I think we've got a sense of a number of questions that we've taken in at this moment, and I think there will of course be many more questions I'm sure that our viewers will have in the days ahead. But clearly this doctors roundtable that we've had has helped us settle a lot of the concerns from testing to vaccinations that people have at the moment, to the use of Remdesivir as well. Thank you all very much. Always a pleasure listening to Top Doctors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello everyone, this is Rahul Kamal here. Hope you enjoyed this video. For the latest news and analysis, like and subscribe the India Today YouTube channel, and don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated.